What happens when you feel like what you're doing is no longer making your heart sing? When you feel wobbly in life and unsure of which way you want to go, do you have to call your journey of self discovery and self improvement spiritual? These are the dilemmas my guest, Josephine, has faced before in her life some 20 years ago and is now facing again. So join us as she shares her winding path from journalism to nutritional therapy and spiritual explorer, and shares the practices that she found effective when facing change. You're listening to Wisdom Without the Guru, and I'm your host, Regina. So welcome, Joe.
Thanks,
Thank
Regina.
you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And you are joining us from Singapore, correct? Okay. Where you say it's storming monsoon season.
Yeah, it was storming, but it has stopped. It has stopped now.
That's good. Just in time for the podcast. No background music from the storm. Okay, so a little bit for our listeners about how I know Joe. I call her Joe, but Josephine, what do you prefer I call you in this?
Let's go with Joe. Let's go with
Okay,
Joe.
Joe.
We are friends. We're good friends.
Yes. Okay, so I've known Joe about 10 years. 10 years, you'd
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
Yeah, and we met in Singapore. We met through the spiritual community there. And we met also because I had a holistic center there and I was holding events and classes and inviting in practitioners and whatnot. And Joe came, and that's how we got to know each other and got to be friends. I moved to Belgium 7.5 years ago, and she's still in Singapore, maybe moving sometime to
Who
be
knows
seen.
what the universe brings?
Yeah, definitely. So, you have a practice in person and online there with your nutritional therapy, correct?
That's right. So I currently work in a complementary physiotherapy center. So it is mainly physiotherapy, but they incorporate some other complementary therapies to, for a more integrated approach to their clients and their patients who come in. So I mainly see clients face to face. Occasionally, I do online if the clients are from overseas or for some reason they can't come in if they're too busy and they just want to opt to do online, but it's mostly face to face.
Okay. Okay. And so in our talk, and so we do a pre-podcast call, of course, and I actually found out more about Joe than I knew before. For example, that you were a journalist 20
Yes,
years ago. That's what you were doing.
yes.
So tell me about this sort of how you got into journalism. I mean, why you chose that to start off with, because, some people say, oh, I did it but I didn't want to do it, or I did it because it was the only thing I could do, or whatnot. I mean, but maybe you studied. I actually studied journalism, but I never did anything with it.
Well, if you believe it, I actually have a science degree. But when I graduated, I have a science degree from the University, National University of Singapore. But when I graduated, I became a reporter for the local newspapers here. And what happened was I did want to become a journalist because it was what I thought was a practical way for me to earn a living while I could write. So since I was a child, I've always wanted to be a writer. That was my first love. So I used to write short stories. I used to write what I considered poetry, and I suppose I was journaling. And actually, one of my short stories was published by the Straits Times. So I actually used that to leverage to my advantage when I went for the interview.
And the Straits Times, by the way, is the national newspaper in
Yeah,
Singapore.
national newspaper, one of the broadsheet newspapers. So when I graduated, I wanted to be a journalist, even though I had a science degree. Why I had a science degree is another long story. It wasn't that I wanted to do a science degree. I was just forced by circumstances. So I became a journalist. I got into the job. It was something I wanted to do. And I loved it in the beginning. And what I really realized was, i- thinking back, the part of about the job that I enjoyed was actually the fringe writing that I was doing. Stuff like, when you're in there, because it's a whole group, they've got lifestyle section, they've got the Sunday paper, not the hardcore news, not
Hmm.
financial news, not hardcore news. So the stuff that I liked was when I could volunteer to do fringe writing, like, I would go and interview underground bands, and I would go and interview people with quirky lifestyles. So those was the stuff that I like to do on the side, and that was what kept me motivated. But anyway, I stayed there for 4 years, and then I got a job offer in a magazine group. So I jumped ship because I thought that would appeal to, the more of the fringe and the creative side of writing. So I went there. So I won't go into too much detail. So I went there for a couple of years. Then I got a bit disillusioned. There was problem in that group. Then I went into business journalism. I
The thing
dropped in,
that you didn't want to be in before.
yeah, I went to business journalism. But
I wouldn't call that fringe.
no, but at the time, strangely, I wanted to go back into journalism, and I specifically wanted to go back into business journalism. For some reason, I just wanted to cater to the more mental side of me. I have no idea. Just and I pursued it, and I was actually told there was no way I could go into business journalism because I had no experience in it. I didn't study financials in university or anything. I never did anything. My news reporting was just like general news, lifestyle, that kind of thing. I think I'm the sort of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I want to prove you wrong. So I kind of taught myself financial markets. I crashed course and I taught myself the financial markets. I read financial newspapers. I picked up books and I did a crash course on myself for a couple of months. And I went for the interview and I got in. I got into Dow Jones. And the American Y agencies in Singapore, it was Dow Jones Telluride because there was a merger between. Anyway, that started off my track into financial journalism. And while I was in Dow Jones, I think I was in there and I threw myself into the deep end. I covered stock markets and all the financial stuff and all this sort of stuff. And it was exciting for a while. And while I was there, Reuters came and poached me. So I was poached by Reuters. So I went into Reuters and I was in Reuters Singapore for about 4 years. And I must say, I really enjoyed it because the bureau was really dynamic. I was doing stock markets and I was doing charting, financial markets charting, would you believe it? And they sent me to London to train me and all that. I got hired because they were looking for someone doing financial charting and nobody wanted the job.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody wanted the job.
listen,
And
I worked in admin in an investment referral company, one of these people that manage stocks and bonds and whatnot. And
yeah,
I hated it. I thought it was the most boring stuff in the world. So all
I
hats
don't
off
know.
to
At the
you.
time, I still enjoyed it. The analytical side of my mind was still craving it. So I got in a job literally because there was no competition and they couldn't find anyone else. But anyway, I did enjoy my 4 years there, and a lot of it I have to give credit to the fact that we had a wonderful bureau chief and the my colleagues were wonderful. They were great fun. And then of course you do, you are able to do other kinds of writing, do features writing, other sort of stuff that you wanted to volunteer for and all this sort of stuff. But that took me to London subsequently. So after a while, I wanted to go overseas. And I think for a long time, I wanted to experience life overseas, but I just didn't have a way to get there on my own. So in Reuters, they did have overseas posting and all that sort of stuff. Although coming from an Asian bureau, they don't usually send people from the Asia bureau. They tend to be the European. They rotate among themselves in America. But again,
Mhm.
because I had a very proactive bureau chief and he pushed for me to have an opportunity to go. And I originally wanted to go to New York, but there was no position open. And then, but I was still applying. He was helping me to apply, knock on doors. And the London bureau, Reuters London bureau, called my bureau chief and said, "Hey, I noticed that she's been trying to apply for positions in the US. It said we need someone in London. Would you like to come?" So anyway, long story short, jumped through a few hoops. I went to Reuters in London and I enjoyed it in the beginning, but it was different because I wasn't reporting. I was editing on the desk. So I was doing financial news editing, European financial news and a bit of Asia because you take over from them and some of the financial news from the US. But I was doing financial news, so the mergers and acquisitions, stock markets, all that kind of stuff.
So you weren't out in the field
I
interviewing
was
people
editing.
and getting stories. So how long did you do that before you had that aha moment where this isn't working anymore?
I did it to a point when I started become disillusioned. News started to change. The way news was presented started to change, and I started to feel that it was becoming like a commodity. So all the wire agencies, Bloomberg, Reuters, they were competing and they were trying to be innovative with the products they were selling to the brokerages and the clients. So I started to feel that it was becoming a commodity. It wasn't the journalism, the idealistic journalism that I wanted or I
Mm.
was attracted to in the beginning. And also I started to feel like at that point in my life, during that time, mergers and acquisitions were very, very big. You one company swallowing up another and all that. And then you have all these huge numbers, being bandied about, bought for how many billion or whatever not. What is the value? What does it mean? All this sort of stuff. And I got to the point when it became like a commodity and I was starting to feel like I wasn't enjoying it and starting to feel like I dreaded going to work. And when I came home,
Mm.
I was exhausted, but I couldn't recall what I had done. And it started to become meaningless. And I
Did
suppose,
you ever this is something that happened to me when I really was in a job I didn't like. It was like I almost got psychosomatically sick. I would get sick for no reason, and I never used to get sick a lot. And it just felt like had to do with the job because you just really don't want to go in.
yeah,
And I guess
no,
in
I
your case,
wasn't
it sounded like you're just tired.
I wasn't sick. I just felt like I was dragging myself to work and I
Mm.
couldn't wait for the day to be over so that I could do other things that I enjoyed. And while this was happening, so when I first went to just before I went to London, I was actually very ill. I got really, really ill and I was having this really weird stomach pains, really bad. Like sometimes when I was in Singapore, I used to have to drive to press conferences, and I had to pull over because I had this weird stabbing pain in my gut. It was so bad. I thought I was going to crash. I had to pull over. It was like somebody was using a knife and it was cutting me. It was so bad. So this carried on till just before I went to London, so of course I got a bit concerned. So I had myself checked out. I went to hospital, had a scope, went to the gastroenterologist and the specialist. They scoped me and everything. They couldn't find anything. And they told me nothing wrong with you. You probably have IBS, and they gave me some medication. So I know later on, after studying nutritional therapy and seeing all the clients, they tend to label you with IBS when they don't know what's going on with your gut, right? So
Yeah, I
anyway,
was just
I got
thinking that.
yeah, I got the same label. So when I went to London, after a while, I started to change my diet because I started following this nutritional therapy, this duo, they call themselves the food doctor. And one of the reasons I started following that was when I moved into London. When you live in Singapore, you know what it's like. People eat out the whole time because it's fairly affordable, and or if you live with your family, you are taken care of, you go home for home cooked meals. I didn't live with my family, but I could go back on weekends and be fed and all that, and
Yeah,
the
I
rest
want
of
to, Joe, can I just back up? Because people who don't know Singapore are wondering, are people in Singapore really wealthy that they eat out all the time? So
it's
can
quite
you just
affordable.
sort of say what you
Yeah.
mean by eat out? Because I know you mean the food markets and whatnot, that
Yeah, I mean,
they're,
you can eat out fairly affordably, eating local food.
mm,
Even if you didn't eat local foods, you went to cafe. I mean, okay, this is a long time ago. It was still fairly affordable. It was
mm,
affordable, and I guess I was fairly well paid. So, I could afford to eat out at cafes, but I could go home to the family to eat at the same time, right? So there wasn't really a need to really learn how to cook. I could barely cook. I could cook one dish, and I think that was like chicken curry. That was the only dish I could cook. So when we moved to London, it's different. You can't eat out the whole time. So I had to
no, it's
fend for myself,
expensive.
and I miss local food. So I started learning how to cook by watching cooking programs, and I experimented with food, like really going to buy raw ingredients and cooking a meal, and I started enjoying that. And at the same time, I discovered these people called the food doctor. So I started learning, all about diet and all sorts of stuff. And strangely, so when I got really disillusioned with my job and I was thinking about, okay, you know, I don't want to do this. So what am I going to do next while I was in London? So I was looking for alternatives. Like I mentioned to you before, so I did a 1 year course in web design. I did I wanted to do like maybe, masters in business. And I was thinking, then I changed my mind. So what am I going to do with that? Nothing. I finished my web design course and I was thinking, okay, maybe I could be a website designer.
You
But
had stopped working for
no,
Reuters
I
at
was
this
still
point.
working. So I did all these. I was still working full time. So I did all this on the side, like doing
Mm.
part-time courses, weekend courses, got a diploma in web design. But somehow it just didn't feel right. So one day while I was at work, mulling over all these while editing at the same time, it suddenly dawned on me that I really enjoyed doing all this nutrition stuff. I experimented on myself. And by the time when I changed my diet, all my symptoms had gone away. Then I thought, hey, this stuff worked and I'm really into it now. So I was thinking maybe I could study this and this could be my alternative career. So that was what set me off. So I went to these people, the food doctor, I got in touch with them. So the lady of the duo was a gentleman and a lady. The lady was very kind. She replied to me. She told me where they studied. She gave me some advice. So I contacted the Institute of Optimum Nutrition where they graduated from. It was the first institution in the UK that offered nutritional therapy then. So there wasn't really any other place to go. So I went to them and I discovered they had a foundation science course to kind of prepare you because you need to have a science background. So technically, I didn't have to do that course because I already had a science background. But because I left university a long time, so I said, okay, I'm going to do the foundation course just to test my knowledge and to make sure that
Mm.
I could hack it.
Like a refresher.
Yeah, so I signed on there. They had two. They had a year-long one, and they had a compressed 3-month course in the summer for those who missed the full year. So the compressed 3 months was they compressed everything they did over a year over the summer. So you studied every single weekend over 3 months, and you took the exams.
So
So
it's
I
an
did that,
intensive
and
course.
I absolutely loved it. It was natural, and it was actually easy, the chemistry, the biology, the human physiology, it was pretty easy for me. And in fact, I joined the class quite late. I was like a month or 3 weeks late, but I had no problems catching up. It was easy. So when I finished that, the only difficulty was 3 months, I had very little social life. So there was a little bit of friction between myself and my friends because they couldn't get me out. But I finished it and I said, okay, look, if I can do this intensively for 3 months, there's a good chance I could hack it by continuing working full time and doing their part time 3 year course. I had to give up a lot, but I figured, there's a good chance I could do it. So that was what I
Mhm.
did. So 3 years later, I finished the course and then I had
But
to
you're
decide.
still working. You're
I was
still
still
working?
working. So by
Oh,
my final year, when I did my dissertation, before the final exams, I was burned out. I was burned out because
mhm.
it was 3 very grueling years, and a lot of people did drop out, but I was very motivated. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't mind studying weekends. So what I tried to do was when I was working at Reuters, there were shifts you could take. So I always tried as much as I could to do the earliest shift where I started work at 6:30 in the morning. And then I would finish work at 2:30 in the afternoon. And then after that, the rest of the day for studying.
Wow.
So I was that motivated, but I did burn out in my final year. I did burn out.
But you had talked about you had some spiritual signposts that were also leading. You talk about some book dropping, and there were
Yeah.
some other things that you talked about that were sort of
So
also
when I came,
helping you
that
say yes.
happened. Yeah, that happened when I started pondering. So I'm finishing the course. I'm going to graduate. The whole reason why I did the course was for me to have an alternative career, alternative pursuit, right? So of course, you know, I'm sure a lot of people face the same thing, right? You have a very regular income, decent income, your
Mm.
life was comfortable. Uh, are you brave enough to give it all up and start all over again? And it's a very, at that time, it was a very new field. Even in the UK, it was a fairly new field more than 20 years ago, right? So, of course, you have the jitters. So, a couple of things. Well, I guess three things, right? You say things happen in threes. One, I was having vivid dreams. One of the dreams was I was standing at the edge of a cliff and I was looking down and it was water below and there was this kind of like a Indian sadhu, the holy man. He was wrapped like in a white robe and he was kind of sitting like in a boat or something on the water and he waved to me and he was beckoning to me and he was saying, jump, jump. And I said, no, 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 no.
I
I
don't
can't
want to.
jump. I can't jump. I'm going to drown. And he just said, no, just jump, just jump. And I said, no, no. And for some reason, if I remember correctly, there were people behind me and they were saying, do it, do it. And I said, no. And someone pushed me. So pushed me over the edge and I fell in the water. But when I fell in the water, I just surfaced. I surfaced up and then I was okay. And then my dream ended. So that was one signpost. Like if I took the leap of faith and I jumped in, I wouldn't drown. I automatically surfaced and I was fine.
So, did you believe in dreams giving you messages back then, or?
I enjoyed. I had, I'm one of those people that have vivid dreams, like for many years, even before I left Singapore. And I had all kinds of vivid dreams. I found them interesting. I think there are meanings to them. Whether I acted
Mm.
on them, I don't think I ever consciously acted on them. I just thought, okay,
But you were
that's a
very aware
message.
of them. You
I
were
was
very
aware,
aware
so
of
I
them.
knew
Yeah.
I was aware that dreams gave me messages. But
Mm.
whether I acted on them, I think most of the time I didn't really act on them. So this one was a very vivid dream. So I thought, okay, there's a message, but it was kind of in the background. It wasn't good enough for me to make the decision to quit my job. I just said, okay, that was like, yeah, like a big, that's a big message. And then about 2 weeks later, I was in a bookshop in King's Cross. In the bookshop, one of the well-known, one of the old bookshops. I was in bookshops browsing on the weekend, and I love browsing. So I was on the shelf, and this book fell off the shelf. The Journey
What is that?
by
The Journey by Brandon
Brandon Bayes.
Bays. Okay, it's a bit
Brandon
shiny.
Bayes.
That's why I can't see it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's about this lady's a spiritual book about how she healed herself of cancer. So this book fell off. So I picked it up and I thought, okay, I've never heard of her, don't know. Looks like interesting book. So I turned the page and the so my book is very yellow because it's more than 20 years old, right? At the beginning was this
What does it
message
say?
here. So I'll read
Read
it
it.
to you. It says,
Mm.
come to the edge, he said. We can't, master, we're scared. Come to the edge, he said. We can't, master, we're scared. Come to the edge, he said. They came, he pushed them, they flew. He said, freedom is your destiny, yet we fear taking the very step which will carry us into the greatness which is our own true nature.
Ugh,
What?
that makes me just want to cry, Joe.
Oh my
That's
God.
freaky.
Exactly. I mean, it mirrored my dream, right? It mirrored my
Yeah.
dream being pushed over the edge, and it's about confronting your fears. So
Mm.
that was signpost number two. Then things were happening at work. There was a redundancy scheme going on. I can't remember the timeline, whether it was exactly at the same time, was a little bit while later, but it was definitely during the time when I was in my final year, going towards the end of my course, facing exams, doing all that during that period of time. So there was this redundancy going on. I wasn't offered redundancy. One of my colleagues was offered redundancy. He was in his 60s. He was a British guy in his 60s, offered redundancy, but he didn't want to go. So we heard that he was going around trying to find an alternative job. So what happened was he was told by the company that he could look for another job within organization, and if he could find one, then that suited his skills, he could have that job. Then he wouldn't be made redundant. So he was looking around, and he wasn't having luck. So it suddenly dawned on me. He said, "Hey, what about if I swap places with him? What about I offered to take the redundancy, and he could have my job because we did the exact same job." And not only that, they would pay me very little compared to what they would pay him. He's been there for 30 years. I've been with Reuters about 11 years by that time. I was on a Singapore contract. So what they had to pay me was very little compared to what they had to pay him, literally, really little, right? But it will help me. So I asked my boyfriend then, who is my husband now, I asked him about what do you think? Do you think and we had a union then. I said, what do you think if I approach the union to ask them to broker this for me? What do you think? Then he said, I mean, he was supportive in the sense that he said, well, if you really want to do this, then I don't see what's the harm. Although maybe he think it'd be better if I had a full-time job, but he didn't stand my way. He just said, if you wanted to do this, then it makes sense. So that's what I did. I went to the union. So cut a long story short, it was all brokered, and within a couple of months, 2 months or so, he got my job and I got the redundancy.
So did you then move back to Singapore or did you
No,
stay?
because I was in London. So I think this happened after I finished my exams. Now the thing about I had finished my exams, and I can't remember whether I had the exams results. So I already finished my exams. So the timing was just right. So they offered me the redundancy. I looked at everything and I said, okay, fine. This is it. This is my 3 signposts, right? What more can I ask for
Yeah.
as confirmation from the
Knock
universe?
over the head.
What more could I ask for? 3 in a row, right? So I took
Uh,
the redundancy and I set up my nutritional therapy practice. And then 20 years later. So I was in
so
London.
you set it up in London at first.
Yes. So I
Oh,
did.
okay.
So I work as a nutritional therapist as a self-employed for 4 years. It was a very tough 4 years. I won't go into that. I was very hard on myself and all that sort of stuff. So and then we moved to Hong Kong because my husband got a job in Hong Kong. So then I was in Hong Kong for 5.5 years, and that was the time. I think that was the peak of my nutritional therapy career because I got into a medical clinic who was very open-minded. And they were a very, very busy clinic. And the Canadian doctor who owned the practice, she believed in nutrition. So I had a whole lot of referrals. There were more than one doctor, there were other practitioners. So I had a whole lot of referrals. So that was the peak of my career.
Uh-huh.
And then after 5.5 years, we moved to Singapore again because of my husband's job, also because things was took a turn in Hong Kong where the practice where I was in, things changed. So the atmosphere wasn't very nice anymore. And my husband also wanted a change. So when there was an opportunity to start an office in Hong Kong, he volunteered for it. So I came home to Hong Kong, came home to Singapore, and then I
You mean
practiced.
you mean he found an office in Singapore, not Hong Kong.
It was the same company that he was working in Hong Kong, but they wanted to
Mhm.
open a Singapore office.
Okay, so
Yeah,
together you moved back to Singapore.
so
Yeah.
he and the MD started the office in Singapore for the company that he was working for.
So listen, Joe, that was a huge change. I mean, and that was a lot of risk as well. It took a lot of courage. So hats off because that was a lot of hard work as well. But were you supported by your friends? I mean, your obviously your boyfriend who became your husband supported you because he's still with you. So, but I
And
mean,
then
did your friends like that were in the UK or your friends back in Singapore or your family and also your colleagues from your journalism background, did they support you in this huge change or did you feel kind of alone?
Well, I think they all raised their eyebrows. They all kind of think, this is really interesting. And they all thought I was very brave. When I was in London, because I had to work and study at the same time. So again, I didn't have a lot of social life. I did see my friends, but they definitely saw less of me than would be normal. So I didn't have a huge group of friends. I had a few close friends, and I think they understood. They didn't discourage me, but sometimes, of course, there was frictions because they said, "Come and join us for this," and I couldn't, and I had been studying and all that sort of stuff. Um, they didn't discourage me, but they were not saying, yeah, that's a good thing. They did think that I was brave, right? But because I was living overseas, I was quite independent. So my family didn't really get in the way. Like, I didn't even
Mm.
have to really tell them what I was doing anyway. So once I started my practice and all that sort of stuff and got myself off the ground, and of course my circle of friends then included other people in a complementary health world, fellow students. Some of them stayed friends, became friends till now. So my circle of support uh, widen into more different groups of people, but still my group of close friends remain small. So after a few years, when they saw that, okay, I was really doing it, I was really believing and breathing and working in it, then they got more interested. Then they started asking me questions when they started having health issues. Then they started like asking for free
So did
advice.
you say book an appointment?
Well, it was generally, something that's harmless, or I'll give them, generic advice, but usually if it's something that's more complicated, I cannot give you the kind of advice. So some of them did become clients. A few of them did come to me, or they
Mm.
refer people to me. Some of my friends, oh, I know somebody who's got this problem. The doctors haven't helped them very much, could you help them? I said, yeah, of course, if they're interested. So they did refer some to me. So whether my friends supported me or family, so they were not that much of a factor in my decision, or
Hmm.
or for the rest of it, they were not, yeah, not much of a
Okay.
factor. Yeah.
And when you were making this change, I mean, for you, this is, I guess, a personal growth, but did you think of it in terms of spirituality? And especially because of the signposts, some people would usually say, oh, well, if you read meanings and things like that, that's, you're spiritual. How did you view yourself back then? Did you view yourself as spiritual, or as just, okay, I'm just trying to improve myself, improve my life, and, personally grow and expand my horizons?
Well, the I was definitely very passionate about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lasted 20 years. So it was very heavily science based, but because it was studying science towards a holistic purpose, right? So the tools that you use were everything natural. It's your diet, it's your lifestyle. Yes, you do take some supplements, but they're not drugs, they're not pharmaceuticals. And the strangest thing was there was spiritual element in it, because more than 20 years ago when I was studying, so this was a very new field. So there were not a lot of teachers, right? Not a lot of teachers. So the tutors and the lecturers had quite a hodgepodge background. And I remembered one of the tutors I really liked was also a yoga teacher. She had studied nutritional therapy. She had graduated. She was practicing, but she was also a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher. And I had a wonderful tutor, Leonie. I remember her to this day, who was so quirky. She dressed in purples and greens. She talked about the moon phases, stuff like that. And she talked about Eastern philosophy. So she was really quirky. So she was definitely doing some spiritual stuff on the side. But on the
Mm.
other hand, she was a tutor, tutoring us in our seminars, on our assignments and lectures and all. But she had this quirky side. So it was always there in the background. So I did
Hmm.
not consciously think of it as I was answering just a spiritual call. To me, it was more just going into something that was natural and holistic, and the universe thought it was a good time for me to do it. So I was very into the science. The science didn't get it in the way. I loved the science. I really loved it. Until now, in the last, I think what the spiritual part, the calling became more obvious after I moved to Hong Kong because the move was not smooth. When I
Uh-huh.
was in London, the spiritual side of me was in the background, but it wasn't loud. But then when I went to Hong Kong, my life in Hong Kong wasn't smooth at all. I had a lot of challenges. And I think that was what brought the more, the louder calling of the spiritual side more to the
It's
fore.
interesting that you say you had the most challenges, but it was also the peak of your career.
Yeah, it was the peak of my career. So what happened when I went to Hong Kong? I didn't work for the first year. I was miserable because I couldn't find a place to work because nobody understood nutritional therapy. Or to put it another way, so in the UK, nutritional therapy is based on the principles of functional medicine, which is a field that came from the US. So it's functional medicine. So when you study nutritional therapy is unique to the UK.
So what
Nowhere
is
else you can
functional
find.
medicine? What, because I don't know what that is.
Okay, so first of all, nutritional therapy is a term that's unique to the UK. And in the UK, nutritional therapy is taught based on the principles of functional medicine. So, functional medicine came from the US, from the Institute of Functional Medicine, more than 20 years ago, started by scientists and doctors, actually. So, functional medicine it's based on science, but it's holistic in the sense that it looks at all your body system, kind of like a naturopathic principles. You look at all your different body systems and how they're all connected. So it's not separate. It's not like you look at the heart for cardiology. It's one compartment
So it's
only.
what we call integrated medicine now.
Yeah. So they call it functional medicine because they're looking at function rather than disease, like how to optimize your body's function before it gets to the state of
Uh,
disease. So it's looking at how all your different body systems works together, but how it also interacts with things like your genetics, your internal and external environment, your mind, your body, your spirit.
uh-huh,
So they do take into account things like what's mental, what's in your mind affects your physical being,
uh-huh,
and what's your emotions or your spirit also affects your mental and physical being. So it's all encompassing, although I must say that they tend to focus more on really the science part, learning all the science, all the pathways, and how, yes, how all the body systems connect together. They will pay attention to the mental side more in terms like, stress management. But when it comes to like, say, emotional and spirit side, most people who practice nutritional therapy, functional medicine will tend to refer out. They will recognize that it has an influence, but they will refer out. So
uh-huh.
they will refer
Okay.
to somebody maybe that's cognitive behavior therapy, talking therapy, or a meditation teacher, or if they're open to it, maybe trauma work, or whatever, right? So they tend to refer out, but they recognize it has an effect
Uh-huh.
on that. But I think nowadays you'll find that a lot of people who do nutritional therapy or so-called functional medicine related nutritional therapy, a lot of people are learning other modalities so that they can incorporate into the practice. It's just how they incorporate the whole thing.
So now, okay, so you've come to this point again that you were at 20 years ago. So why are you at this point of relooking your career or what you want to do next? And um, what is the thing that's put you there? Is there one moment, where you went, no, something's got to give, or it's just been building up, or
I think it's more of a build-up process. So I have to back up a little bit of history into Hong Kong. I think it started in Hong Kong and then it started building very slowly. So because of the challenges I had in Hong Kong, they were both physical challenges and emotional challenges, right? And to a point when I had retinal detachment. Uh, yeah. And I was in hospital and there was a lot of complication with my eye. I've had 3 eye surgeries on my right eye. So a combination of physical challenges and stresses, emotional stuff, and family challenges and all that sort of stuff. It was very difficult. And I was working at the same time in nutritional therapy, and I was doing really well.
Mm.
Then when my retina suddenly detached, and I discovered that that tipped me over the edge. Of course, then I was in hospital and all kind of stuff, and everything came to a head. And I started asking like for help, because it was not just a physical challenge, right? You ask yourself, why is all this confluence of factors? And of course, I was very stressed, and stuff was still going on at home and all that. Then I started questioning, and then I started looking for other therapies to help me. So I went for acupuncture, and the acupuncturist, was trying to help me with my eye and everything, helping me with my liver because of all the emotional stuff that was going on. Of course, the TCM said that, your gallbladder, liver, because it's all this is about anger, emotion, grief, and all sorts of stuff, right? TCM addresses all the kind of stuff,
Right.
and acupuncture. And she saw that I was in a real state, and then she said, let me introduce you to other people. And she introduced me to a meditation teacher, and she introduced me to another lady who did kinesiology work. So I started being introduced to all these more so-called a little bit more woohoo therapy. But I went,
Alternative therapies.
yeah, I mean,
Alternative.
as alternative. Some people would think of it as woohoo. It
Yeah.
didn't, the label didn't affect, but it started to pique my interest. So I went to these people to help myself. And from there, things kind of snowballed. And I knew I had interest in this in the background, but now I was using them as therapy for myself, right? And then through all these, the biggest um thing that helped me through all these wonderful people was I found this meditation group. And through one of those meetups, you have those, you could look on meetups,
Yeah.
meetups and all that, right? So I found this meditation group because the meditation teacher was trying to teach meditation. While I loved her, she's a really kind, her method of meditation did not really appeal to me. And she was more the kind of I don't know, maybe more of the spiritual, more on the Indian side, where you don't eat certain things, you don't eat
Mm.
garlic or onion, because and like that contraindicated with my nutritional therapy. Garlics and onion are very good for your gut, and it just, I couldn't resonate with that. But I knew that meditation was something I was keen. So I found this very interesting meditation group, uh very small group, and they did things like card reading. There were people who did channeling. So this channeling was a whole new thing to me. So for the next 2 years or so, I went every single week. And that group really saved me. It really saved me. And it got me really interested into the more alternative side and all this
Mhm.
spiritual stuff. And I started like, oh, this is really interesting. Oh, this is really interesting. How do they channel and all this sort of stuff? And then started, trying other stuff, astrology, Vedic astrology. I went to see a Vedic astrology and had my chart read. I started being, very curious about all this sort of stuff. And then I was having very constant messages. I was thinking, oh, is everyone in the town telling me the same thing? The Vedic astrologer, reading all my chart. I mean, he did tell me, okay, this part of your life, this is happening, this part is happening, this part is happening, but you're a healer. Then when I went to this meditation group, then they drew cards and they just said, you're a healer. And then they were channeling, and then there was this guy, he was channeling, he said, you're a healer. While they were telling me I'm a healer, I'm a healer and healer. And it didn't dawn on me that I was already a healer because of my work. Nutritional therapy is
Yeah.
also healing. But it did not occur to me. So when they say I'm a healer, I kept thinking they meant energy healing, right? Energy healing. And
Uh,
I was very analytical because I was still doing nutritional therapy. And I was like, I can't feel energy. Damn it, I can't feel anything. They were like, okay, do this, feel, no, I don't feel anything. And they said, yeah, they could feel, and then when they were doing whatever meditation or channeling, they could feel, can't feel anything. So I was so frustrated. I said,
mm.
okay, it's not meant to be. And I learned Sekhem healing. I told you I learned Sekhem healing. Um, But when I learned second healing, I did feel when they attune you. I did a kind of what do you call it? Like a trial thing. I went to one of those introduction session, and she attuned you for 24 hours, and I felt it. Then I was thinking,
Mm.
I could feel it. So anyway, so I did that course. But for some reason, when I moved to Singapore, fell by the wayside. So when I moved to Singapore, all this got parked on the side. I was just trying to get my nutrition therapy off the ground again. So I got it off the ground eventually, and then I've been steeped into it. But one point, when times when I wasn't very busy and all that, so I was still enjoying all these alternative therapy. So I was still trying to practice a little bit of second healing, trying to get my friends. I wasn't doing like a proper thing, I was just trying to get my friends over.
Mm.
Then I would practice. I would still, whenever there was a psychic in town, which I thought I would go and see the person, that kind of stuff. And then I started for some reason in my I don't know where it dawned on me, I became interested in medical intuition. I can't recall how that came about. I became interested in medical intuition, and in my functional medicine US group, there's a closed group for functional medicine practitioners. One of the practitioners in there practiced medical intuition. And I found out by accident because for some reason in the Facebook feed, she popped out one day talking about medical intuition, and she was doing this live. And then I realized that she was in my functional medicine group. So I was thinking, this is really strange. She's in my
So
functional
what is
medicine.
medical intuition? What is that?
So I don't know whether you know about Caroline Mays. She's a very well-known medical intuitive. She's probably the most well-known medical intuitive. So medical intuition is somebody who uses their intuition and they can scan you. So they use their intuition, they can scan you and they can look into your body, they can look
When you
around.
say scan, speak as if you're speaking to someone who has no clue about energy.
So they just use the intuition, and they are one of those people who are able to look uh well, not look through the eyes, just look intuitively into your body, and they can find what's wrong, whether it's physically or emotionally, or there are blocks or information about you that's related into, whether it's an illness that you're interested in, you come to see the
So
person,
it's a
or
sensing that they
yeah,
sort of
it
like
could be various forms.
feel into your body and sense that
No,
these
it
things are going
depends. So
on.
some people, like you say, somebody intuitive sense is whether they're clairsentient, clairaudience. Some people feel, some people have a visual image, some people hear, depending on where their intuitive senses are more acute. So it can be any of these, right? So, but
But
a medical,
do they have medical background?
no, not necessarily. So the lady, the one I was telling you, this American lady who was in my functional medicine group and she was doing it live, she came from a medical background. She was
Uh-huh.
actually an eye surgeon. So she
Okay.
came from a medical background. But Caroline May is the most famous medical intuitive. They,
Joe, that's very interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're saying she comes from an eye surgery background, and you're saying you had all these problems with your
yes,
eye.
yes, yes, yes. We make
What's the
when I
link?
started talking to her, when I connected with her, we
Mm.
made that connection as well. So,
Mm.
but what I'm saying, Caroline Mays doesn't have I don't think she has a medical background, but she worked with a medical doctor. So, what's his name? Norman Shealy. He's just passed away quite recently, actually. He's quite a well-known medical doctor in the US. He collaborated with Caroline Mays. So he sent his patients to Caroline Mays because for things that he couldn't work out, he couldn't find what was wrong, he sent them to Caroline Mays, and Caroline Mays would do this scan and then mm, gave him the information so he could help his patients.
Okay.
So um,
So you
that's how
started to get
it is.
interested in this medical intuitive path.
Yeah. So I was interested in it. So I did connect with this lady. I had a couple of sessions with her, and I was telling her, look, I'm very analytical. I'm one of those person I can't feel energy. I don't think I've got, my intuition is very good. I'm not sure I could do this. And then she tested me, and I told you about it. She tested me. She said, can do a test. And she said, I'm holding something in underneath, and I won't tell you what it is. You just close your eyes, feel into it, see whether you can get any information, describe the thing to me. So I described the shape, I described the feel, and she did three different things. One was I could get the shape fairly accurate, like it was looking like a bottle, which was only a bottle, but I said it was kind of like, it's like this shape, it's like an hourglass, a bit of hourglass, but a stem and all sorts of stuff. And then there was something, was a food item. She said this is a food item. Then she asked me to use my intuition and feel into it. What was the text? So I could describe the texture, the taste, stuff like that. And it was beef jerky, so I was quite accurate. The color, the taste, and all that. I was
Uh-huh.
quite accurate. Not 100%. I got like maybe 60%, 70%. And she said that's actually
Uh-huh.
very good. So she said, if you train in it, you practice it, you have it. Because like without any training and all that, you could pick a few things up. So I did a bit of training with her, but I did not continue with her because I couldn't afford it. So anyway, so then after that, but she really piqued my interest. And then yes, because she was eye surgeon, we got into this thing about, my eye and what was the,
The
the
significance of that.
yeah, that's a significant something. And of course, all the other people that I saw, trying to understand what happened to my eye, they tell me things like, has to do with something you didn't want to see in your life. You didn't want to see, you didn't want to face it, something you did not want to see. And then some of it
Mm-hmm.
apparently was related to my childhood, my mother. Anyway, I wouldn't go there. So anyway, so
There's a guy in there's an eye doctor of some kind in Singapore that I saw before I left because I have problems with my eyes, and I was seeing these shimmering lights all the time in weird situations, and I even checked to see if I had a retina tear when I had my normal eye check. So I went to this doctor, and he's on Orchard in almost at the end of the road there. Anyway, he was very interesting because he listened to that whole story that I had about this energetic awakening and all these things that I had gone through, and he believes that the eyes are connected to, yes, these things you don't want to see. And like one of my eyes is stronger than the other. And he says, do you tend to see certain things out of one side, not the other? And maybe the reason, consider the reason that the one eye seems weak is because you keep trying to block out certain things, like, for example, if I could potentially see ghosts and I just don't want to, that my eye is stopping me from doing that, and so it's making it weak instead of strong.
something just occurred to me as you were saying that. So my right eye is the problem. The one had retinal detachment, glaucoma, optic nerve on my eye was damaged partially. The pupil on my right eye was damaged as well. So I had surgery to reconstruct my pupil. So this vision is not 100%. I can see, but it's blurry. So my strong eye is my left eye. And I've had other physical injuries, and they're all on my right side.
Mm,
I broke my knee, it's on the right side. So it's all on my right. So the right is your masculine side, I think. So there were other interpretation of this issue with a masculine whatever, like maybe your father or all that. So your left is your more intuitive side. Am I right?
well, if you're right-brained and if you're left-brained, I mean, but then the right brain controls the left side and the
Yes,
left brain
yes.
controls the right
So
side,
the
so I always
left
get it
side,
missed.
so your I always get it mixed up. So I think the right side in terms of physical symptoms is masculine, but your left brain controls. So your left brain is uh more analytical than your right brain, but it
Mm,
affects the other side of your body, right? So as you were saying, I was thinking, so my left eye is my strong side. This is the eye that is weak. It will forever be weak now. So it's like maybe I spent all that years exercising this side, my analytical side. Now they're saying like, okay, we got to block this so you can work on, so you can make this side stronger now.
Mm. Interesting, isn't
That's
it?
just what popped into my head. Like, we got to block it so that you can make this side stronger, because otherwise this side
Yeah.
like getting in
I
the
I
way.
was really surprised when that eye doctor was, that was the last thing I was expecting when I went in there, you know? But, yeah, it was really, really quite interesting. He really felt that if you could heal these other things in you, you could heal your eyes as well. So it wasn't just only, physical aspects of it. But going back to the fact that you're looking to make a change now, and you were thinking about this type of medical intuitive, but you just don't know right now what's holding you back, and that's wanting to include more of a spiritual aspect into what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
So when I was
what have you figured out is holding you back?
Okay, just a little bit backwards. So when I was doing all these, and then I did do a course in medical intuition, then I started doing other courses and all that. So what I wanted to do, because my interest grew in that area. So what I wanted to do was to meld the two, to combine the two. So combine my nutritional therapy, the scientific knowledge with the spiritual therapies. That was what I
Mm,
wanted to do. But somehow I couldn't find a way to really do that. It's always been I do too much of that or I do too much of that. I couldn't quite marry it. So I have a separate website now that offers this alternative. At one point, I put this alternative, this more spiritual aspect as a small bit in my nutritional therapy website. So it did attract some people. I don't know how they found me. So I did do some of it, but I've always had to separate the two because of circumstance. I couldn't do this
mm,
in the place I was working, and I couldn't
right.
quite do at home because there's limitations to what I could do at home. So I couldn't find a happy way
Because the
to
place you're
find.
working now is more scientific
Yeah, they wouldn't let
focused.
me do this sort of stuff because they were afraid there might be complaints. They wouldn't.
Mm,
And so when I did this, the client had to come for a separate session, and just separate the two. And not most of the clients who came from nutritional therapy are not so inclined anyway. A few would be. So if I spotted somebody whom I thought it would help, I might suggest it to see whether they're open-minded. And sometimes
mm,
if they were, I do not necessarily offer it. I would point at whoever I think would be of help. But sometimes if they say, oh, I've already tried this, I've already tried that, then I said, oh, I do this, are you interested? And if they say yes, then we could give it a go. But I never pursued it actively.
mhm,
So in the last and I suppose when COVID was another push factor, right? So with COVID and all that, I think all of us kind of re-examine our lives and what we want to do. Some people then change job, left a job, started work from home. So I think with COVID, I had more time to dabble in all these things. And then after post-COVID, now we kind of go back into it. So now that I've gone back into it, somehow that passion is uh not as strong during nutritional therapy. The passion is not as strong. It's not that it's not there. But I just feel like I'm being pulled
mhm,
more to doing more of this, a bit more spiritual. So I haven't come to the point where I decide I'm going to give up. I think I'm kind of moving towards it, but there are days when I feel like, quick, because the kind of clients that I see, it's very intensive. It's very intensive. My first consultation is easily 2 hours, sometimes more, and then the follow-ups are like an hour, and it's very intensive. But whenever I have a new client and they come and they are very on board, and you have somebody who is very on board, who and you feel it could help, and after 2 hours you feel, oh, yes, I'm still in this. I still believe in this. I'm
mhm,
motivated. But when I come home, I get really tired. I get really tired. And somebody said to me, you get really tired, maybe because you are also carrying the energy. All these people who have chronic illnesses, you are carrying energy and you've been carrying it for a long time. I don't know how many people I've seen in 20 years, right?
mhm.
All these
Yeah.
people. So it feels more like a pool. At the moment, it's like a pool, uh, like a like a call. Um, so it's not Like, I feel like nutritional therapy is meaningless. So when I left journalism, because I kind of felt it was meaningless. So it's not
Hmm.
like I feel it's meaningless. It's definitely still very meaningful. I kind of feel what I told you, like that is another expression of myself wanting to come out.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like,
So yeah. So
what, you know?
it's funny because you're saying that where you are now is too science-based and you're wanting to move. And before you were, I love the science, I love the science.
Yeah.
But now you're sort of wanting to make it, I don't know, I get the word come softer, more,
Yes.
yeah, and include more of these spiritual and self-development as well. And
Yeah.
almost, I think, bringing into the truly
Yeah.
functional medicine that it was and not just science.
Yeah. The
So,
bit that they are not so strong is
yeah.
I just feel like, mm, it's just we maybe at certain times of our life we have different, for one better word, different expressions of our self, of our
Mm,
true self, or a different iteration. It's like we have the
definitely.
potential to be so much. So I've spent 20 years being that.
Yeah.
So the other expression of myself hasn't come out. Bits of it has come out, but it hasn't come out fully. So
Hmm.
maybe that part of me wants to express more, whether you will take over everything. I don't think it will take over everything because nutrition therapy will always be there. It's just the form of it, like maybe I won't do intensive one-to-one, but I'll still use the principles, right? And I will
Or
still
you
walk
could do group classes. You could
maybe,
actually do
yeah, maybe,
teaching.
yeah, maybe more teaching. But even if I do the spiritual side, you could still help people in terms of the nutrition and lifestyle. Somebody is not eating a
Yeah.
good diet, it's very obvious. It's something I could, you know, chip in and give some suggestions, right? And or if they have something that I think a nutritional therapist or function medicine person can help, and if I don't want to do that in depth, I know where to direct them. So it's
Hmm.
not going to leave me totally, but it's more of where I'm going to spend more of my energy. Um, and yes, like maybe the softer side of me, uh, you know, will come out, you know, you know.
Well, do you think there's anything specifically that's holding you back? Anything that you're in fear of? Could it be that you fear people thinking it's too woo, even though you're still doing nutritional therapy, which is accepted, I think, and I
Yeah,
think
more accepted now.
recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you fear that if you start to include these other things that you won't be taken seriously or you'll be called woo or that, I mean, what do you think the fear is that you have
I
that's
think,
holding you
I mean,
completely
definitely,
back?
definitely that there is fear. I've been thinking a lot about it. I think it's age. Like you think,
Mm.
okay, I turned 63 recently. It's like, yeah, I turned 63 recently, and it's
I
like,
wouldn't believe that, Joe. Wow.
do you want to start? Well, okay, maybe it's not totally start all over again, but
Mm.
on quite a new project. Then you're 63, you're talking about like the last quarter of your year, right? Do you want to take on something like that? I mean, I could just do it for myself just as a hobby, there's no issue. But do I want to come out as offering this as a service to people, right?
Mhm.
Officially? Do I want like a whole new project and maybe there's some responsibility that comes into it? Yes. Mm, I think at the biggest thing that stands in my way is my own limiting beliefs. Like, probably I'm not good enough still. Like, okay, I can dabble in this as a hobby, is fine. But to go all full on and to say that I can help someone, am I kidding myself? I think it's the limiting belief of like, can I really do this? And also, like, I like to earn some money, right? And I think there's nothing wrong wanting to earn some money. I don't have to earn a whole lot of money, but I like to earn some money because I've always liked to have some independence. Even if my
Mm.
husband can provide for me, I like to have some
Definitely.
independence, right? So is it something I can turn into something that can earn me a little bit of money would be nice. It'd be nice to have. But I think at the end of it, it's the limiting belief that I won't be good enough to do this. I'm not really that capable of. I think it's the limiting belief. So I'm grappling with that. You know,
Okay.
I'm still grappling with
Yeah,
that.
that makes sense though. I think that's what
Yeah.
a lot of people face too.
Yeah.
So you talked about a lot of the things that you dabbled in through the group that you met in Hong Kong, and of all those things that you dabbled in, what do you find absolutely did not work for you? What is it that you felt that worked for you enough that you're actually still using it and using it on a regular basis? So, for example, we mentioned journaling and yoga and Sekhem healing, etc.
I can't say that anything doesn't work for me absolutely. You know, any of those, I will get some benefits. Is whether I'm interested enough to sustain it. So I think journaling definitely has been a lifelong thing, even though I've been doing it unconsciously. So it wasn't something new that I took on after I was interested in. So like I said, since young, I've been writing short stories and all that, and writing in I have journals of 20 years or more than 20. I still keep some of them. That has always been with me. So definitely that is a tool and something I've gone back into consciously now. So those are like every now and then when you're going through a difficult period in your life, maybe you would do it. But in the last few months, I find that it's something I consciously do and I actually look forward to doing it. So journaling, um, through you, I learned about languages, whether you call it light language or ancient language of the self or
Mm,
whatever. And you were
just
the one,
expressing.
yeah, you were the one who actually turned me on into it. And when I first met you, I couldn't get anything out, right? And so when I met you and we were in Singapore, when I saw you, we did some of those workshops I practiced when you were there. And then when you left, it just all fell by the wayside. And recently we reconnected. And when you put on your meditation, I kind of got back into it. So I find that I'm reconnecting with the light language. I don't do it as like a regular practice. So what I try to do is like what I find useful, if you're talking about useful. Like, I'm not somebody, while I like to meditate, I'm not somebody who can sit for a long time still.
Mm,
So those long, still meditation don't work for me, or long visualization don't work for me. If I feel the urge, I don't say wake up in the morning, I must do it 10 minutes. When I feel the urge, and I actually feel the urge more nowadays, like, "Oh, I really want to sit down like for 10 minutes, 15 minutes." So when I feel the urge, I'll get into just doing slow breathing. And because I'm not the kind of person that can blank the mind, I need to use a tool
mhm,
to get me to not be distracted. So I would just break out into the language as a way,
yeah,
right? Or I would visualize something like like I might come across somebody that was talking about something. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me try that. There's somebody that does the figure eight
uh-huh,
meditation thing. Like, so I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Let me try that. So I'll think of the figure eight and then move it around the body and see whether it works. If it doesn't work for me, I'll leave it. But I would use the language. I find it very useful to get me into like a short meditation. And I will, I'm sorry, I want to say something now, but it wants to
what
come up.
something in the Samalaskuta, Samaratka.
So I will be meditating, then something like that will come out, right?
So this is what she means when this is what Joe means when she's talking about light language. Some people call it language of the soul. I call it languages of self. Some people call it languages of light. And it's these languages that come out to express. And people call them different things, but that's a whole different subject. But
Yeah,
that's what was just happening, and that's what Joe
yeah.
was just speaking. That was not, if you don't know, that was not Mandarin or anything.
So, so, so that is one of my, I guess you could call it reawaken tool, which I got from you and haven't practiced. So that's coming back. So I use that whenever I feel like meditating, or I use some short visualization, and journaling is my main tool. The other thing I find it really works. Not so much as in one of the therapies that I learned that okay, now I'm going to do intuitive scan on myself. I mean, I don't, but for myself, I would find that I just try to drop into neutrality. So I think this could be useful for anybody. Like if you have any kind of challenges. I mean, right now in my life, there are some uncomfortable things going on. My husband and
Uh-huh.
I facing some uncertainties. So there is anxiety over that. And so what really helps me is when I feel the anxiety comes on, I just drop into neutrality. So I'll just say, okay, I'm not going to label that something. I'm not going to go in the direction of anxiety. I'll just observe it. And I'll be very neutral. I know that I'm feeling anxious because of whatever the reason. Then I'll say, okay, whatever the thing is going on, there's these possibilities. Then I'll say, okay, I'll be neutral about the option. Okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could mean this. And I try to look at all of them neutrally in a neutral way and then just say, okay, that's interesting. Nothing has happened yet. I just know those are options. So I try to be neutral. So I find that being
So
neutral,
it's just watching. It's watching your emotions and watching what's coming up.
I suppose you don't put a label into whether something is good or bad. So you're just neutral. It's
Uh-huh.
not like, okay, if this happened, this is good, or if this happens, this is bad. I'm just saying all the options are neutral now.
Uh-huh.
All of them are possibilities, and I'm neutral. I'm not choosing one over the other. So I'm just
Okay.
taking a neutral stance. So that
Okay.
helps me a lot. And I suppose the other thing is just to be present. So that's the other thing I'm practicing more and more is just to be present. And present really helps because that focuses you on just doing whatever you're doing. Then you don't think
Uh-huh.
about the next 15 minutes, the next 5 minutes, or whatever. It's just now, right? So people who do spiritual practice, I think we all know about the only moment you have is now. It's just
Yeah.
now. You can't change what has passed. You don't know what's going to happen the next minute. I don't know what you're
Uh-huh.
going to say the next minute, Regina, but you know, this is what I'm saying now. Right.
So
So
you're talking about journalism and journalism and journaling. And I guess the question that comes to mind is so you say you've been journaling for a long time and you were journaling this whole time you were journalism. Well, actually, were you journaling when you were journalism? Because sometimes I wonder if, journalists write so much that the last thing they want to do is write down, in a journal at the end of the day. How was that interview? That was a really crappy interview, or.
well,
So, I mean,
I didn't journal about my work so much. So I might
mm,
journal about my personal life. I might journal when I was traveling.
mhm.
When I was working in my 20s, when I first started work, one of the best things about it, it gave me the financial freedom to travel. I could afford to travel, and I did a lot of solo traveling all over Europe. So whenever I travel, I carried a journal. So I journal a lot when I was traveling. So I wasn't journaling about my job. It's more about
So what is journaling for you? Because also, I'm not sure it was you. We were talking about, there's keeping a diary and then
yes,
there's
it was me. We
journaling.
were talking about that. Yeah. So
So what
journaling
is
is
that?
different. It's different from keeping a diary. A diary is like strict record. So you record like, okay, what happened today? Or very often I tell my nutrition clients to keep a food diary. So that's a diary. So you record
Mm,
down what you ate. It's a record of what happened, right? And it could be a schedule. If you're diarying, you diarize something, it's a schedule of what you're going to do, where you're going to go.
uh-huh,
Journaling is more of a reflective process. It's more about tuning to your thoughts, writing down your thoughts and your feelings.
mhm.
So it's thoughts, feelings, and reflection. So you would probably uh now for me it's more um reflection rather than the other two. So I'm already reflecting about something. So I write it down. So when I write it down, it captures my reflection in a more tangible way than rather than something that's fleeting, is in and out of my mind.
So somebody who's new to this, how would you recommend they start? I mean, I would tell them go get a really nice journal that you like the cover out of
Oh yeah,
something
yeah,
pretty.
yeah. So I have one here that says, "Do you ever ask yourself what if?" So whenever if I'm browsing, I see something, like a nice notebook and all that, I will buy. I have a whole collection, and I remember one of my friends on my Hong Kong meditation group. When I went for meditation, I would carry something, and whatever was channel, I'd be writing it down. Oh, this is what came through. I'd be right. And she said, I notice you're always writing. You're always writing. So for my farewell gift, she gave me a whole lot of journals, like a whole pile of them. So I've been using
Yeah.
them, right? So I collect them. So yes, something nice to write in. But also something useful, like, something small and not heavy that you can put in your work bag or your handbag so that
Hmm.
you can journal whenever something pops in your head, an aha moment, a feeling, a thought, anything that pops in your head that you feel is worth writing down so that you can come back to it. You can just pull it out. So which is why I have so many. I don't have one. I got one by my bedside, one in my
No,
room.
it's good. You
Yeah.
wake up and write your dreams as well.
That's what I do. I wake up, write my dreams, and sometimes
Yeah.
before I go to sleep, something comes into my mind, and I think, okay, this is interesting. I just realized this because I don't want to go into the other bedroom. I just
Mm,
take whatever by my bedside. So it's a bit disorganized, but I don't
yeah.
think that matters. I think it's the process, and the aha moments you get into it, and the reflective value, because it's not always about giving you answers, but it will help you to I don't want to use the word think because it's so mental, right? It
Uh-huh.
helps you to
Well, be aware.
maybe it's a way actually of getting out of your mental state. To me, weirdly, writing is a way to get me out of my mental state and more into my intuitive state.
Uh-huh.
And then when you write something, and sometimes months later or a week later, or even day, you go back to it and say, that's what it's trying to say or
Uh-huh.
point, right? So I would write something, and just this morning I would say, like you asked me the question, what's my fear? And I actually wrote, I was reflecting on the questions that, we could possibly discuss. And I was thinking, okay, fear about age, fear about maybe I won't earn enough money to be
Yeah.
happy, stuff. And then just a few minutes before I gone, I just said, no, actually it's about my limiting belief.
Mm.
This fear is, so I went back to it and I wrote over it, my limiting belief.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's also interesting with journalism because journaling, excuse me, that you can go back and sometimes you can see a trend. You can see
Yes,
where things keep coming up
yes,
and maybe that's also an indication, well, I really need to pay attention to this because it really keeps coming up. And the other thing is I know somebody also does journalism because they feel like it's like doing a brain dump. It's just like
right,
dumping everything on the page and as you say, allowing space for the intuitive side to
yeah,
open up and for your brain to breathe, I guess,
yes, yes,
just
yes,
to breathe in, allow room for some other things to come in if you can get it out that way.
yeah. And I think a lot of people probably start, if you don't know how to start, they say, okay, I don't have anything to reflect on. So it could be a dump for your emotions. I think it's a very useful dump. Like if you're sad or you're depressed or you're angry, you just express it. So it doesn't matter, you just express it. And it doesn't matter if you can't read or writing, right? And you can tear it up. People do things like burn or whatever. If you had a breakup, you want to curse your ex-boyfriend, you just express it because yes, it's a way for you to dump negative emotions. So it
Yeah, and I
doesn't
think because people can't always talk to somebody about something, and so being able to I mean, it goes back to, the keeping a kid as a diary, and I mean, they would say diary is a different, you write all the things that you just can't tell anybody else. You write it secretly in your diary. And I mean, I think it's a way also of putting on a page what you just can't express to other people, but you need to get it out.
yeah. And years later, if you read it, the amazing thing is you would have grown so much and you say, wow, this was
Yeah.
what I was like when I was 16, when I was in my 20s, in my
Mm.
30s. This is how I view situations. This was what was bothering me. Why did that bother me? It was like, geez, why was I heartbroken over him? Like, you know, you really see your growth, right? I
Yeah.
don't think it's possible if you keep a journal over the years that it's not possible that you have not grown one way or another.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think
Okay.
journaling is great.
What would you say for somebody who wants to become a nutritional therapist? I mean, what do you recommend to them? How can they start? What to expect? How long does it take? Is it popular? Does it pay well? Let's be honest.
Whether it pays well or not, I think it depends on how creative you are with your business model. So people that do the practitioners who do well don't tend to do one form. So they would have various models. So some people would do individual work and then they might do group work as well. And then some people might incorporate corporate work as well. And then some
Mhm.
people, when they experience enough, they will teach as well. So there are variations of how you want to implement it. If you're interested in the first place, you first of all got to have a science background. So nowadays, I don't know I think you need a minimum of equivalent of A-level science, if not a university, some kind of a science background. There's
Mhm.
no getting away from that. And then you got to ask yourself, the form that you are interested in, are you looking to learn it just for yourself and maybe just to help your family? Do
Mhm.
you want to do it as a career to replace an existing career or a career because then the choices of the courses that will might determine what form, whether
Mhm.
uh it's a more rigorous one, and nowadays most of the schools will give you an option where it's not as rigorous, it's just for you to learn enough to help yourself, family. You don't go and offer it, or you're not a therapist for somebody who might have serious health
Right.
illness because you're not equipped to do that. But if that's something you want to do, then you have to make sure that's something you want to do because it's quite rigorous.
Do
If
you
you're
have to
talking,
have a license to do that?
yes, of course, you need to be qualified in
Mhm.
it. So nutritional therapy, like I said, is UK centric, right?
Right.
So if you Google nutritional therapy in the UK, you see the schools that come out. So all of them are degree programs now. There's things like CNELM, there's still Institute of Optimum Nutrition. There's some universities that offer that. I think Worcester University or something, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm not
Mhm.
current on what the programs are now,
Okay.
but they're all degree
So depending
programs.
on where people are in the world who are listening to this in the States, you said it's called, is it called something else in the States?
In the States, functional medicine is different. Functional medicine in the States cater to people who are already medical doctors.
Okay, so that's not nutrition though. That's something
Then
else.
they go on to become a member of IFM and they take the courses to apply the functional
Yeah.
medicine to that. Or you can also be I think nurse practitioners, dietitians, and all that.
Mhm.
So you don't go into functional medicine as the entry point. You are already something else, and that is an
Okay.
add-on.
And then probably in Europe, I don't know how that works at all. But anyway, something to Google to see
Yeah.
what is the
So in
equivalent.
Europe, I mean, you can be things like a naturopath. They're quite similar, right? Naturopathic
But they still have a
school.
medical background. They still have
Yeah,
naturopath.
whatever it is, you need a science background, right? You
Yeah.
need a science
Okay.
background. So nutritional therapy is UK centric. Nowhere else has the term nutritional
Okay.
therapy, right? And the schools, most of the schools, institution in nutritional therapy now offer online options, which
Yeah.
I think was because of COVID. So they
Mhm.
couldn't do a lot of the live stuff. Like previously, they had a combination of online and live, but you have to be there to do like the clinical observation because you need to do clinical observation when you're doing consultation. And you need to be physically there for to be observed by a group of your peers, observed by the tutors. You have to be
Yep.
there in person. But during COVID, they couldn't do that, right?
Yeah, that's a good thing. There's a lot of stuff that's now that a lot of educational courses of every kind that you never used to be able to get online that you had to
Yeah.
go in person. And I think COVID just really opened the
Yeah.
doors to a lot
So
of
I
things
think
in that way.
many of the schools now are able to do it online, although I must say that I'm not very convinced about how good you could do consultation observations
Yeah.
online. I think,
Probably there's certain things that they need to go there for
yeah,
at the
but
end of a certain
they do
period.
offer like the Institute of
Yeah.
Human of Nutrition. I was told by a student in Singapore now who's in her final year that they do it
Uh-huh.
all online now. That's the
Uh,
model they've adopted. And I was like, okay,
okay.
I'm not very convinced how good the clinical training would be if it's all online. But anyway, that's the model they're following now. So I'm out of it. But I'm just saying there are online models now. So
Okay.
it may not matter where you are in the world. There are still some hurdles, things like where do you get your professional indemnity insurance if you're in a
Yeah.
country where they don't offer this kind of professional indemnity insurance to cover this kind of profession, right?
Yeah, because Joe, I have a sneaking suspicion that some people who call themselves nutritionists do not have this type of background. They're,
Yeah,
they,
there are um
yeah, it's,
staff that they are not properly qualified and they might do a course for a few months and then they call themselves
mm,
that. So of
yeah,
course, I think in every lot of complementary therapies, there's always that. Like in the
yeah,
US, there is a nutrition course that's a 1 year that's quite popular. So a lot of people don't want to do like a 3 or 4 year nutritional therapy course. In the UK, they will do this 1 year. In the
uh-huh,
US, and then they call themselves health coaches, for instance, right?
yeah, okay,
But they would not be dealing with the kind of clients that I deal with. Like I
yeah,
deal with autoimmune conditions, I deal with neurological conditions. I don't think they will be doing stuff. They'll be doing more health coaching, the lighter side, the more
uh-huh,
preventative side, which is fine. It's needed.
okay,
So it depends on what scope you are interested in. So you could do a 1 year course in the US and be a health coach. There are some who do training in Australia. I think Australia has pretty good training. They are quite
uh,
rigorous, but they will be Australian. They'll be qualified. Their degree or whatever will come from Australia. And then it's up to them what kind of bodies they belong to. What are requirements of their associations there that you follow.
okay. So what advice would you give somebody that is also facing this kind of change? Or what could you tell them? I mean, considering what you've gone through 20 years ago, what you're going through now, what is the advice that you would give somebody who's facing the same dilemma of making changes?
I'm not sure I'd be very good at giving advice because I need advice myself.
No, but you give advice about, what you feel is working for you and the mindset that you feel that is working.
I think just speaking from myself, what I'm trying to apply to myself, I am trying to be open. I still believe that the universe will nudge me further along. So I try to be receptive to the nudges that the universe is giving me.
Uh-huh.
I try not to be impatient. I will take it as it is. Like, for instance, my stance is like I do not actively go out and look for clients in my nutritional therapy. I kind of like hands off. Whoever comes is will just come. And if I get less and less and less, I think then that is another sign that I should spend more time. That gives me time to pursue the other stuff that I'm interested in. And
Uh-huh.
I think also other things happen in your life that will point the way. Like whatever is going to change is happening for my husband and I in the next few months, definitely. And I think that's part of it as well.
Uh-huh.
So if something happens with that, what is the outcome? I think it's going to be in line with the next expression of me. Like say for instance, for example, it ends up that we have to leave Singapore, or the choice is to take an option to leave Singapore, then I will stop practicing here and I would not restart again in a new country. Then I would look for a new model incorporating the more spiritual stuff and keep the useful parts of the nutritional therapy. Then I won't be doing what I'm doing now, the one-to-one chronic illness. So it's bit that would be
But when
very,
we
very
spoke
weird.
before, you said for people who they don't know what they want to do for a career, or they don't know they want to switch, but they don't know, or they want to follow some kind of spiritual practices or self-development practices or holistic practices, whatever you want to term it. But we had spoken about the fact that doing something small every day, something that
Yes.
excites
So,
you.
but so if you're not sure, like, okay, I know I don't really like my job, so I don't know what's my. So the key, I think the key for me anyway, has always been following my passion. And sometimes it takes a long time for that passion to blossom fully. But you always, I think for most people, you have an inkling of what excites you, what you're passionate about, what you're excited about. So I think you follow what excites you every day, even if it's just something small. So what gives you that feeling of joy, that little heart
Yeah, because
skipping?
that's the thing I can hear people say, and I can hear myself saying, because I have been through this. I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm passionate about. I mean,
So so
there's
maybe
things I
passion is
like,
too
but
big.
what is passion? I'm not an artist. I'm not,
Maybe
So,
passion is too big a word. What makes you feel good? What
mm,
gives you joy? Like I know you like to walk in the forest a lot, right? So that gives you joy. So if going for a walk is something that makes you feel good, then do it. So that's an example of following something that gives you joy, gives you excitement. Just follow that. So, for instance, if you were to be on Facebook and you look at something and then you say, oh my God, that's really interesting, then look into it. Whether it is a
mm.
book, whether somebody talks about something. Very often I will listen to a podcast and somebody will mention something. And I say, okay, what is this about? Oh, that sounds very interesting. Never heard of this. Let me go and check it out. Then they said, I bought a book on Carl Jung. It's kind of like his memoirs because of a podcast I listened to, and it's
Mhm.
talking about Carl Jung's, he's through another person, with him collaborating, recording his dreams and his memories. So I
Mm.
said, oh, that's really interesting because I'm very interested in what dreams mean, and my dreams are very vivid. That's really interesting. I've never read Carl Jung. So I went to Google and I found the books. I bought the books. I'm gonna read it. Things like
So
that,
what I'm hearing is that you can't just sit back in your wherever you live and go, okay, I'm going to find out what I'm passionate about
No.
just sitting
Well,
in my
well,
house. You have to go
okay.
out and actively explore even, and you don't have to spend money to do that.
No.
You can
So
look
it's small
online.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're even looking random searching, so I think a lot of people the thing is they say they mindlessly scroll. They mindlessly scroll and they get very distracted. So when people are in a bad state, they don't want to feel lousy. They look for things to distract them, whether it is food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's TV. So distraction can be useful in the sense that it does kind of alleviate, like if you're in a painful state, you're depressed, you need something to distract. That's
Yeah,
fine.
and
But
distraction doesn't always have to be negative. Distraction can
exactly, so I
be
was saying it doesn't.
walking or
Yes,
cooking or yeah.
but when you're looking for distraction, just pay attention to what you're watching. Something will come up that will catch your attention or what you're listening to. So when you're scrolling, what makes you pick something? Like, right, even if you're scrolling, you want to listen to something, what should make you pick that? That must be something that piques your interest that made you pick that. Why didn't you pick something else? So if you pick that, then pay attention and see whether something jumps out of that. Something, a word somebody says, an idea somebody says, something
Yeah.
mentioned is while you're looking for distraction, you also need to pay attention, I think.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is you also need to be proactive as well. And do I make the change? Am I serious about making the change? And, even if it's just little steps. When I
Yeah.
was years and years ago, before I first moved to Europe, I had been living in Atlanta, Georgia, USA, and I had wanted to move to France and to Paris. And, I had spoken French I had learned French. I can't say I spoke it because you find out you actually don't speak it until you get in the country and realize 8 years of speaking French were just down the tubes. But so what I found worked for me is that there was something that I really, really wanted to do. I did something little every day
Yes.
towards that goal. And for
Yes.
example, I had a tiny little statue of the Eiffel Tower on my desk all the time. And so that was like a type of constant motivation. Or I would learn about French culture, read a little bit about it, or I would try to learn a new phrase, even though I already spoke some French. And, I tried to do something, just even if it was for only 2 minutes every day to get towards that
Yes. Yes.
realization. And it took
Yes.
me a year and a half
Yes.
before
Yes.
I managed to get it.
But you knew what you were interested in at that point, so you took small steps
I
in
did,
things that were
yeah.
related. So if somebody say, I don't even know where to start, then that's where you have to
Yeah.
proactively pay
Yeah.
attention, because it's there. It's just that it's
Yeah.
glossed
To
over.
what is piquing your interest.
So anything that piques your interest, then you just explore it. And if
Yeah.
you just and then you explore it till you can't explore it anymore. Then if you say, okay, this looks interesting, that I'll go and look, and then pursue, and then suddenly find, oh, this is not it, I'm really not
Yeah.
interested. Fine, drop it. Then you find the next thing. You find the next thing, but you've got to kind of exercise that muscle, that curiosity muscle,
You're right.
or
Right.
start, right?
But the thing that I personally would advise against is for trying to explore too much at the same time, because then you just yeah, you get overwhelmed. You don't know what's working for you. You don't know what exactly is the thing that's exciting you or resonating with you because you've just dove into too many different things at the
Yeah.
same
I'm
time.
not saying everything. You just pick one or two, and then you
Yeah,
explore, and then you
yeah.
explore it, and then every day just do check a little bit on something of that. Is it still interesting? Is it still
Mm,
interesting? And then if it's still interesting, you will draw you more and more towards it. If it's not, you drop it, and then you look at something else. So yeah, look at something small every day that excites you, gives you a little spark of joy, and follow that.
okay. Okay, so where can people find you? Because you also do work online. So do you have a website or social
Yes,
media
so
or
I have two
something?
websites. So I have my nutrition therapy website. It's called the nutritionmentor.com. So that has my contact, via email, and my contact number. And then the more esoteric spiritual site is called soulenergy.com. So I'm not active in there formally. So I'm just kind of nudging towards it slowly, slowly. But if you're just interested to have a look to see what I've been
Hmm.
dabbling in, that's the place to go.
Okay, and I will have the links to Joe's websites listed in the show information that you can find. So, what are some final words or what are some final thoughts about where you're heading and what you think people should get out of this podcast that we've had?
I think, and I'm telling this to myself as well, is to keep an open mind, try and let go. Whenever you're uncertain about certain things, ask yourself, what is it that's blocking you from taking the forward step? And that's usually a fear. Then you got to ask yourself, where does that fear come from? And that fear is always from some kind of limiting beliefs. So it's our conditioning. So you got to be willing to look at why you have those fears, and is that belief really true, and does it really serve you, or is it because you are conditioned, you are brought up that way, but does it have to be that way? Because I think what I'm trying to practice now is, no matter what happens going forward, there isn't a good or a There isn't a bad. It really, it's about how you respond to the situation. And a lot of
Okay.
us is like, you recognize something is actually not a bad thing on hindsight, right? Like, okay, I have this eye detection. It was horrible when I was going through it. But now I'm looking back, yes, it's still a horrible experience. But I gained other things from there. I got to know this spiritual community. I wouldn't have gotten involved in this meditation group. I wouldn't have that huge spiritual interest, peaked in me and all that. So other things happen. So it's about how you respond to any kind of situation. So
Uh-huh.
I guess it's about trying to understand uh, the fear, where's the fear coming from, what beliefs is tied to, and then whether that beliefs is serving you. So it's not even a good or bad thing, but whether now does it serve you anymore. Maybe when you were young, that belief is protective, it serves you. But now that I'm 63, my limiting beliefs about maybe I'm not good enough, I don't think it serves me. But then it's not an overnight thing. It's not like, okay, I realized that now
Yeah.
tomorrow I'm going to stop everything and start new. But it is slowly, very slowly it grows on you, and then you become like, yes, I get it, I get it, I get it more. And it's not just about a mental thought, okay, I know this is not serving me. I think it's got to become almost like visceral, then you really believe, it's like it's in your body, then heck, I know that this is really not good for me. I can drop it all. It's a
Uh-huh.
process.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's a long answer.
That's okay. So, to recap, Joe has said that one of the most effective tools that she has found for her is journalism. I
Journaling.
keep saying journalisming.
Maybe it's a new tool.
Got
Journaling.
journalism on the head. No, is
It's a new tool.
journaling. Yeah, it's a new tool. Um, so, go out there. You don't have to grab an expensive book if you don't want to, or if you want to feel motivated, you go and find something that really attracts you. Give it a try. Do it randomly if you want. Set a schedule if you want. Do it like Joe said. Take it with you everywhere. And when you feel something or you want to express something, just write it down. Keep it next to your bed and try it and see how it goes. And then also this doing a small thing and trying to identify where your interest gets piqued. Try it and just try it for a day. Things don't work that way. To try it for a couple of weeks and see how it works for you. And I would love for you to write back, and you can also contact Joe and let her know how you feel about the practices that she has talked about and that she has tried, and the advice that she's given. And you can also send me a comment here under the podcast notes to, see how you found these tools effective or not, because I think it's really good to get feedback for people who are trying all sorts of different things. So, somebody can go down and read and go, oh, yeah, okay, so they did that and they did it in this way. And they did it as many times as that and tried it for that long. And it really does help people. So I encourage people to comment, because I think that your comments can also help other people who are read those comments. So I just would like to close now and thank you so much, Joe. Thank you. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning. That's fine. We worked them out. I can hear you. I can see you. So I really appreciate you taking the time and also the courage to share where you are now, because not everybody is open to sharing, the fact that they're not feeling like they believe in themselves at the age of 63. So, you know, some people think, oh, well, at 63, I'm supposed to have it all together. Well, I'm almost 59 and I think the same way. So, no, you don't always have it all together, or you only have it together part of your life and not the rest. So, anyway, thank you for having the courage to share that and to also share the tools that you have used and to offer advice. And I wish you well in however you decide to move on with your journey and your exploration.
Thank
So,
you,
thank you for
Regina.
being here.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for everyone. And we hope that you join us the next time. See you then, or hear you then. Bye.